I never thought I'd see the day when my own daughter's fiancé would look me in the eye and call me not important. But that's exactly what happened the night before their $100,000 wedding. My name is Michael. I raised my daughter, Emily, alone after her mother passed away when she was just 6. I worked 2 jobs to make sure she had everything she needed. Dance lessons, private school, college tuition, every dream she had, I tried to make possible. So when she met Adam, a young, charming man from a wealthy family, I was genuinely happy for her. At first he seemed respectful, always polite, always smiling, but deep down I could sense the arrogance. The way he'd talk about money, cars, and how some people didn't know how to live properly, it rubbed me the wrong way. I ignored it for Emily's sake. She loved him, and I didn't want to ruin her happiness. A week before the wedding, I offered to help with final arrangements. "It's okay, Michael," Adam said, flashing that smug grin. "We've got everything covered. You can just relax and enjoy being a guest." The way he said guest made me pause. But again, I let it go. The night before the wedding, there was a rehearsal dinner at the country club his family owned. Everyone was dressed up, waiters serving champagne, music playing softly, laughter echoing through the hall. When I arrived, Adam's father barely nodded at me. I went up to the bar, got a soda, and sat quietly at the back. Then I overheard it. Adam was talking to one of his groomsmen, chuckling. "Tomorrow's going to be perfect," he said. "We kept it small, only important people." His friend laughed. "What about Emily's dad?" Adam smirked. "He's coming, I guess, but he's just her dad, not exactly high profile." Everyone around them laughed. My heart sank. My daughter's fiancé, the man she wanted to marry, didn't even think I was important enough to be part of his special day. I quietly left the party before Emily saw me. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept remembering all the sacrifices I made, all the years of love, all the times I'd been both mother and father to her, and now, to her future husband, I was a nobody. But I wasn't going to confront him, not yet. Instead, I decided to let his own actions speak for them. The next morning, I got dressed in my best suit and headed to the venue early. When I got there, something felt off. The massive hall, decorated with thousands of dollars worth of flowers and lights, was completely empty. No guests, no music, no staff, nothing. Just silence. I checked my phone. No messages. Then, slowly, I smiled. I already knew what had happened. You see, I had done something the night before, something Adam never expected. I took a deep breath, pulled out my phone, and pressed play on an audio recording I had saved. His voice filled the empty room. "He's just her dad, not important." And that was only the beginning of what I had recorded. As Adam's arrogant voice echoed through the empty hall, I couldn't help but feel a mix of pain and satisfaction. That sentence, "He's just her dad, not important," was more than just disrespect. It was everything wrong with the man my daughter was about to marry. I looked around the hall again. The flower arrangements were still fresh, the candles unlit, the champagne bottles unopened. It was clear the wedding was called off at the last minute. But by who? That's when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around to see Emily, still in her robe, mascara smudged from tears. "Dad," she whispered. Her voice trembled. "It's all over." I walked toward her slowly. "What happened, sweetheart?" She covered her mouth, shaking her head. "I found out everything, about him, about what he said, about the lies." Turns out, the audio recording I'd played wasn't the only thing I had. The night before, when I left the rehearsal dinner early, I didn't go home. I stayed outside the club and overheard Adam on a phone call. I hit record without even realizing why, just instinct. On that call, he was talking to someone named Megan. He told her not to worry, that he was only marrying Emily for her family's connections and her late mother's inheritance. "Once it's done, I'll transfer what's needed and we'll move to LA," he said.
Her old man won't even notice. He's just a boring small-town guy." That single line burned into my mind. After recording that call, I couldn't sleep the entire night. I wanted to confront him right then and there, but I knew Emily wouldn't believe me unless she heard it herself. So at 5 a.m., I sent that audio to her phone anonymously. She listened to it while getting ready for the wedding. Within minutes, she called off the entire ceremony. Adam showed up at the venue an hour later, furious, demanding to know what happened. Emily refused to see him. When he tried to storm into her dressing room, the security guards, paid for by my brother, thank God, stopped him. That's when I arrived. The place was empty because the guests had already been informed the wedding was postponed due to family emergencies. But it was more than that. It was over. Completely. As Emily stood there crying, I put my arms around her. "You don't owe him anything," I said softly. "He never deserved you." She sobbed into my shoulder, whispering, "I should have listened to you, Dad. I thought he loved me." "He loved what he could get from you. That's not love." Just then, we heard shouting outside. Adam was arguing with someone, my brother probably. Then the sound of a fist hitting something. I walked out calmly. Adam's face was red, his suit wrinkled, his perfect hair a mess. "You!" he shouted, pointing at me. "You did this! You ruined everything!" I didn't even flinch. "No, Adam," I said quietly. "You did that yourself." He lunged toward me, but before he could get close, 2 security guards stepped in. "Get him out," I said, before I lose my patience. He struggled, yelling curses as they dragged him out the door. I walked back into the empty hall. The music system was still connected. Out of curiosity, or maybe closure, I played the full recording again, this time through the loudspeakers. Every single lie, every arrogant word, every insult he ever said that night filled the air. When the audio ended, Emily stood frozen, silent tears streaming down her face. "You recorded all of that?" she asked. "Yes," I said, "because I promised your mother I'd always protect you even when you didn't think you needed it." She hugged me tightly. "Thank you, Dad. I don't know what I would have done without you." I smiled faintly. "You would have survived. You're stronger than you think." A few days later, the story of the canceled wedding hit local news. Adam's family tried to cover it up, but the recording had already leaked online. Someone from the staff must have shared it. The internet did the rest. Adam's company cut ties with him, his so-called friends ghosted him, and within a week, he was completely disgraced. Emily, on the other hand, moved back home for a while. She started therapy, picked herself up, and even began volunteering at a local shelter. She said she wanted to rebuild her life from scratch, and this time she'd choose people who truly cared. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, she turned to me and said, "You know, Dad, when he said only important people, he was right." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" She smiled softly. "Because the most important person was never invited, and that's you." My eyes welled up. For the first time in a long while, I felt peace. That wedding might have been canceled, but what we found that day was far more valuable than any celebration: truth, strength, and the bond between a father and his daughter. Sometimes, life takes away what's fake to return what's real.
6 months passed since that unforgettable day. The chaos of the canceled wedding had long faded, but the memory of it remained etched in both our hearts. Life had begun to settle again. Emily had started a new job at a nonprofit organization that helped single parents, a cause she said reminded her of how I raised her. She was smiling again, slowly healing. Every evening she'd come home and tell me stories about the family she helped, and I could see her confidence returning piece by piece. I was proud, more than words could say. But one Sunday afternoon, just as we were setting the table for dinner, A car pulled up outside our house. I looked through the window and froze. It was Adam. He stepped out wearing a wrinkled shirt, no tie, and a face that looked 10 years older. Emily's smile faded. "What's he doing here?" she asked quietly. "I'll handle it," I said, opening the door. Adam hesitated on the porch. His voice was softer now, stripped of arrogance. "Mr. Thompson? May I talk to Emily?" I crossed my arms. "I don't think that's a good idea." He sighed. "Please, just for a minute." Before I could respond, Emily appeared behind me. Her voice was firm. "What do you want, Adam?" He swallowed hard. "To say I'm sorry." He looked exhausted, broken even. "I lost everything. My business, my apartment, my friends. I deserved it. But I needed to tell you. I never meant to hurt you that way. I was stupid, greedy. I thought love was something you could fake. But I was wrong." Emily stared at him, eyes cold but steady. "You were wrong about everything," she said, "especially about my father." Adam nodded slowly. "I know. I said terrible things about him, and about you. I'll regret it forever." Silence hung between them for a moment. The wind rustled the trees, the sun low in the sky. Finally, Emily spoke again. "You came here for forgiveness, didn't you?" He nodded. "I did." She took a deep breath. "Then I forgive you, Adam." His eyes widened. You do?" "Yes," she said. "But forgiveness isn't the same as trust. I forgive you so I can move on. But I'll never forget what you did." Tears filled Adam's eyes. He whispered, "Thank you," before turning to leave. As he walked down the driveway, I stepped forward. "Adam?" I called out. He turned around. "You know," I said quietly, "you were right about one thing." He looked confused. "What's that?" "Only important people matter. And you were never one of them." For a second, he looked stunned, then nodded and walked away without another word. That night, Emily and I sat on the porch again. The stars shimmered above us. "I handled that better than I ever could have," I said. She smiled softly. "I learned from the best." We sat in silence for a while. Then Emily looked up. "Dad, I've been thinking. Maybe I want to go back to school. Get my master's degree. I want to build something on my own, something that helps people." My chest swelled with pride. "I think that's a great idea. Your mom would be proud." "You really think so?" "I know so." Months went by and Emily flourished. She got into a great program, made new friends, even started dating again. Someone kind, humble, and genuine. She introduced him to me one evening at dinner. The man looked nervous but respectful. He didn't brag. He didn't pretend. He just shook my hand and said, "It's an honor to meet you, sir. Emily talks about you all the time." I smiled. "Good things, I hope." Emily laughed. "Mostly." As the night went on, I realized something. The pain from that ruined wedding had turned into a blessing in disguise. It taught both of us the true value of love, honesty, respect, and family. A year later, when Emily finally decided to get married again, it was a small ceremony in our backyard. No fancy decorations, no rich guests, no luxury venue, just family, friends, laughter, and peace. As she walked down the aisle in her simple white dress, she stopped halfway, turned toward me, and whispered, "This time, you're walking me all the way." My eyes filled with tears. I took her hand, and together we walked to the altar. When she said her vows, there was no pretense, just truth. And when she looked at me before saying, "I love you, Dad," I knew that everything I had gone through was worth it. Sometimes life doesn't give us the ending we expect, but it gives us the ending we deserve.
After that small, heartfelt wedding in our backyard, things finally seemed peaceful. Emily was glowing in a way I hadn't seen in years. She was free. Free from the shadows of Adam's manipulation, from the weight of shame and heartbreak. Her new husband, Daniel, was everything Adam wasn't. Kind, humble, patient, and genuinely in love with her. They started their life in a modest apartment not too far from my house, visiting me every weekend. I thought the nightmare chapter of our lives was over, but I was wrong. One morning, about 8 months after Emily's second wedding, I received a letter in the mail. It had no return address, just my name written in messy handwriting. I opened it and froze when I saw what was inside. An eviction notice addressed to Emily Thompson. Confused, I called her immediately. "Em, did you get some kind of notice from the bank?" "What? No," she said, sounding puzzled. "Everything's fine here. Why?" "Because I just got an envelope saying your name's on an unpaid loan, $150,000 from a company called Sterling Capital." There was silence on the line. "Dad, that's Adam's old company." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" He used to have some properties under my name when we were engaged. He said it was for tax reasons. I signed a few papers without really reading them." I felt my heart pounding. "Emily, you might still be legally tied to that loan." Over the next few days, we contacted lawyers, banks, and even old associates from Adam's company. It turned out that months before their wedding, Adam had taken a massive business loan using Emily's name as a silent co-signer. After the scandal, when his company went bankrupt, the debt legally transferred to her. He had planned everything. "That snake," I muttered, slamming the table. "Even after everything, he's still haunting us." Emily's voice broke. "Dad, I can't pay that much. We'll lose everything." I took her hand. "You won't lose a thing, I promise." I went back to my old accounting job, even started working nights at a local warehouse to help. Daniel did the same. For months, we scraped, saved, and fought the system. But Adam wasn't done. One evening, I got a call from a blocked number. The voice on the other end made my blood run cold. "You thought you could just erase me, didn't you, Michael?" It was Adam. "What do you want?" I asked through gritted teeth. He chuckled. "I want what's mine. You took my future, my business, my name. Now I'm taking yours." "You're insane." "Maybe," he said, "but you'll see me soon." The line deadened. I didn't tell Emily that night. I didn't want her to panic, but I started being extra careful, checking locks, keeping an eye on strange cars parked nearby, even talking to a local cop I knew. Weeks passed. Nothing happened. Then, one rainy Friday night, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Adam standing there, drenched, eyes wild, holding a folder. "You ruined me, and now you'll watch everything fall apart." I stood my ground. "Get out of my house." "Not until you admit you lied. You faked that recording." My jaw tightened. "That was your voice, Adam. Your words, your lies." He slammed the folder on the table. It was filled with documents, photos, screenshots, his so-called proof that I had framed him. But it was all nonsense. He had nothing real. Emily suddenly appeared behind me, frozen in fear. "Adam, please, just leave." He looked at her with rage and heartbreak. "You were supposed to be mine. We were supposed to build an empire. You let him destroy everything." "You destroyed yourself," she said firmly.
You did that the moment you decided money mattered more than people." He took a step forward, fists clenched, but Daniel entered the room from behind, standing tall. "That's enough," Daniel said, his voice calm but commanding. For a moment, it looked like Adam might attack, but then he broke down. He sank to the floor, sobbing. "I lost everything. I just wanted someone to believe me." Emily looked at him with pity, then quietly said, "I believed in you once, and you broke it. I won't make that mistake again." I called the police, who escorted Adam away. As he left in handcuffs, he turned back to me. "This isn't over, Michael." But this time, it was. A few weeks later, the court declared Adam fully responsible for all his past debts and fraudulent loans. Emily's name was cleared, and we were finally free from his shadow once and for all. When the letter came confirming that, she cried in relief. That evening we celebrated with dinner at home, just the three of us. Emily lifted her glass. "To peace," she said, "and to lessons learned the hard way." I smiled. "And to the strength it takes to keep going." She laughed softly. "You really are the most important person, Dad." That night, as I watched her and Daniel laughing together, I realized something profound. Sometimes life sends storms not to destroy us, but to wash away everything fake so that the truth can finally grow. And as the rain started falling again outside, I looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you."
3 years passed since that stormy night when Adam was taken away. Life had finally fallen into a rhythm again. A calm, simple, beautiful rhythm that I'd once thought we'd never have. Emily and Daniel had moved into a cozy little house just a few blocks away from mine. Every morning I'd stop by with fresh coffee, and Daniel would already be mowing the lawn or fixing something around the porch. Emily would tease him, saying he couldn't go a single day without a hammer in his hand. For the first time in decades, I could look around and feel peace. But life had one more surprise waiting. One crisp autumn morning, Emily showed up at my doorstep, her eyes glowing in a way that only pure joy can bring. "Dad," she said softly, handing me a small white envelope. Inside was a photo, an ultrasound. I stared at it for a long moment before the realization hit me. You're gonna have a baby?" She nodded, smiling through tears. "You're gonna be a grandpa." My hands trembled as I held that tiny image, that grainy proof of a new beginning. "Emily," I whispered, my throat tight, "your mom would have been so proud." She smiled. "I know, but I think she's still watching." From that moment on, everything changed. I started building a small crib in my garage, sanding every corner, polishing every piece. Daniel helped on weekends. The smell of wood and varnish filled the air, reminding me of when Emily was a baby and I had built her first cradle by hand. I wanted her child, my grandchild, to have that same love in every detail. Months passed and Emily's belly grew. We spent evenings sitting on the porch, her hand resting on her stomach, talking about names. She wanted something classic. Daniel wanted something unique. "How about Grace?" I suggested one evening. Emily smiled. "Mom's middle name," she said softly. "Perfect." The day she went into labor was a stormy one, just like the day everything fell apart years ago. Thunder rolled as we rushed to the hospital. Hours turned into what felt like an eternity. Finally, just after midnight, Daniel came out of the delivery room, eyes filled with tears and joy. "She's here," he said, voice trembling. "She's perfect." When I held my granddaughter for the first time, something deep inside me healed completely. Her tiny fingers curled around mine, and I felt a warmth that words could never describe. I whispered to her, "You have no idea how much love you were born into." Weeks later, the house was filled with laughter and baby giggles. Emily would call me every morning, asking me to come over because Grace only naps when Grandpa hums that old tune. And it was true. My soft humming somehow soothed her better than any lullaby. One evening, as I was rocking little Grace in my arms, Emily came and sat beside me. "You know," she said quietly, "if everything with Adam hadn't happened, I don't think I'd be here now. I wouldn't have met Daniel, wouldn't have this beautiful little girl." I looked at her and smiled. Sometimes life breaks you just enough to open your heart wider. She nodded slowly. "I think I finally understand what Mom used to tell me. Bad chapters can still lead to good stories." The years that followed were golden. Grace grew fast, full of curiosity and laughter. Every time she called me Grandpa Mike, I felt 20 years younger. I took her to the park, taught her how to ride a bike, and told her bedtime stories that started with, "Once upon a time, your mom was just as stubborn as you." She'd giggle and pretend not to believe me. One afternoon, as I was fixing the old fence in my backyard, Emily came by holding a cup of lemonade. "Dad," she said with a grin, "you've been working too much. You're supposed to be retired." I chuckled. "I tried, but boredom's worse than splinters." She leaned against the fence, smiling. "You ever think about what would happen if things went differently?" I paused for a moment. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but then I remember. If Adam hadn't shown us who he really was, we might have never learned who we were meant to be." She nodded slowly. "You're right." As she walked away to join Grace and Daniel, who were chasing butterflies in the garden, I stood there watching them, my heart full. That's when I realized the true ending of our story wasn't about pain, revenge, or even justice. It was about resilience, about the power of family, about how love, real love, can rebuild what the world tries to tear apart. That night, I sat on the porch alone, looking at the stars. The same stars I'd once looked at during my loneliest nights, asking for a sign that everything would be okay. Now, I didn't need a sign. It was right there inside that little house down the street, where laughter echoed and a tiny girl named Grace dreamed beneath her mobile. Life had finally come full circle. And for the first time, I felt something deeper than peace. I felt gratitude.
5 more years slipped by, quiet and golden. Grace had grown into a bright, talkative little girl with her mother's smile and her father's calm heart. Every morning she'd run down my driveway yelling, "Grandpa Mike, guess what I dreamed last night?" And no matter what she said, whether it was about flying horses or cookie castles, I'd listen like it was the most important story in the world. One summer evening, I was sitting on the porch polishing an old photo frame when Emily came by holding Grace's hand. "Dad," she said, "Grace wants to see your old house, the one where I grew up." I hesitated for a moment. That house held so many memories, some warm, some painful. But I nodded. "All right," I said. "Let's take a little trip down memory lane." The next day we drove out of town to that small yellow house where I had raised Emily after her mother passed away. The paint had faded, and the old maple tree in the yard was bigger than I remembered. Grace ran to it, spinning in circles. "Mom, Grandpa, it's huge!" Emily laughed softly. "That's where I used to climb and scare your grandpa half to death." I smiled. She fell out of it once and blamed the wind. Emily playfully nudged me. I was 6, Dad. We stood there for a long while, the three of us, watching the sunlight fall through the branches. The old house creaked with the sound of memories. When I walked inside, it felt like stepping into a time capsule. Photos still hung on the wall, the marks on the door frame where I measured Emily's height every birthday still faintly visible. Grace ran her tiny fingers over those lines. "This was you, Mommy?" Emily nodded. "Yep. Every year, Grandpa would say, 'Slow down, kiddo. You're growing too fast.'" Grace giggled. "He says that to me, too." We sat in the living room for hours, telling stories. I told Grace how her mom used to insist on making pancakes every Sunday, even if we had no syrup. Emily rolled her eyes, laughing. "You still complain about that?" It was a beautiful day, until we stepped outside again and saw a car parked across the street. A man was sitting inside, watching us. He looked vaguely familiar. I squinted, my stomach tightening. "Emily," I said quietly, "get Grace inside the car." She looked where I was staring and froze. "Dad? Is that—" I nodded slowly. "It's Adam." He got out of the car, older now, thinner, wearing a faded jacket and dark glasses. He raised his hands, showing he wasn't here for trouble. He said, "I'm not here to fight." His voice was weaker, raspier than before. "Please, just a minute." I stepped forward, blocking Emily and Grace behind me. "You've had enough minutes to ruin lives, Adam. What do you want now?" He sighed. "To say goodbye. I'm leaving town. I've been sick." Emily frowned. "Sick?" He nodded. "Cancer. It's late. I don't have much time." The words hung heavy in the air. For a long moment, none of us spoke. Then, to my surprise, Emily stepped forward. "Why are you telling us this?" "Because," Adam said quietly, "I wanted you to know I finally understand what I lost. It wasn't money. It wasn't business. It was you. Your family. Everything real." Tears filled his eyes as he looked at Grace. "She's beautiful," he whispered. "You did good, Emily." Grace looked at her mother, confused. "Mommy, who is he?" Emily hesitated, then said softly, "Just someone from a long time ago, sweetheart." Adam nodded. "That's all I'll ever be." He turned to me. "Michael, I spent years blaming you for everything. But you were right. About all of it. I ruined myself. I just couldn't admit it until now." For the first time, I saw no arrogance in his eyes, just regret, pure and heavy. I sighed. "I don't know what you want me to say." He said, "Nothing. You've already said enough by living better than I ever could." He smiled faintly. "Take care of her, Michael. You always did it better than anyone." And just like that, he got back into his car and drove away. Emily stood still for a long time, eyes glossy with mixed emotions. "Do you think he meant it, Dad?" I nodded slowly. "I think, for once in his life, he finally did." That night, as we drove home, the air felt lighter somehow. Emily was quiet, lost in thought. Grace slept in the back seat, clutching her stuffed bear. When we got home, Emily turned to me and said, "Dad, I don't know how to feel." I said softly, "You don't need to." Some people come into our lives to teach us what love isn't. He did that. And because of that, you found what love really is. She looked at me and smiled sadly. You always know what to say. I laughed lightly. It's a dad thing. As the years rolled on, Adam passed away quietly, and we never heard from him again. But oddly enough, I didn't feel anger anymore. Just closure. Emily named her second child Michael, after me. When he was old enough to talk, he'd climb onto my lap and ask, "Grandpa, tell me a story about when Emily was little." And I would, every night. Sometimes about the good times, sometimes about the hard ones, but always ending with the same line. And no matter what happened, we never gave up on love. Because that was the truth. Our story started with pain, but it became a story of hope, forgiveness, and the strength that holds families together even after they've been broken. Now, when I look at my grandchildren playing in the yard, their laughter echoing through the air, I can't help but think how far we've come. From heartbreak to healing, from loneliness to laughter. Life didn't give us perfection. It gave us something better. Peace.
Years passed, like pages turning in a well-loved book. My hair had turned silver, my steps slower, but my heart was finally at peace. The house was never quiet anymore. It echoed with laughter, footsteps, and the kind of chaos only grandkids could bring. Emily and her husband lived just a few miles away, and every Sunday the whole family gathered around my old wooden dining table for dinner. It became a ritual, one that healed all the old wounds that once defined our lives. One particular Sunday, Grace, now a bright teenager, was helping me set the table. "Grandpa," she said, "Mom told me you used to be rich before that wedding thing happened." I chuckled. Rich in money, maybe, but poor in what really mattered. She tilted her head. "Like love?" I smiled. "Exactly, kiddo." She nodded thoughtfully. "But you got rich again, right? 'Cause we all love you so much." That line hit me right in the chest. I couldn't speak for a few seconds. Yeah, I guess I did. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone on the porch, the same place where I used to cry years ago, wondering why everything had gone wrong. Now, the moonlight felt softer, the wind warmer. Life had finally given back more than it ever took. But life also moves in circles. One morning, Emily came by with tears in her eyes. "Dad, the doctor says your heart's getting weaker." I smiled gently. "Sweetheart, hearts like mine don't break anymore. They just slow down." She held my hand tightly. "Promise me you'll tell me if it gets worse." "I will," I said, though I wasn't sure I'd keep that promise. Over the next few months, I started writing letters, one for each of them, for Emily, for Grace, for little Michael. I wanted them to have something to hold on to after I was gone. I wrote about life, love, forgiveness, and how sometimes losing everything can be the only way to find what really matters. Then, one crisp autumn evening, I asked Emily to take me to the old house one last time, the same yellow one where it all began. She didn't ask why. She just helped me into the car and drove. When we arrived, the house looked even smaller now, like a memory fading into the past. I walked slowly to the porch, every step heavy but full of peace. Emily stood beside me, quiet, holding my arm. Grace and little Michael played under the same old maple tree where Emily once climbed. "Tad," she said, "do you ever wish things had gone differently?" I looked at her, then at my grandchildren laughing in the sunlight. "Not anymore," I said softly. "If they had, I might never have had all this." She smiled through her tears. "You're the strongest man I know." I laughed lightly. "No, sweetheart. I just learned how to stand after falling too many times."
We sat there until the sky turned orange and gold. Grace ran up to me, holding a handful of fallen leaves. "Grandpa, make a wish," she said, tossing them into the air. I closed my eyes and whispered, "I already got my wish." That night, back home, I lay in bed listening to the sounds of life outside. The crickets, the wind, the laughter echoing faintly from next door. Emily had tucked me in like I used to do for her when she was small. "Good night, Dad," she said softly. "Good night, my girl." The next morning, the sun rose as usual. Birds chirped. Emily came over early with breakfast, calling out, "Dad, I brought your favorite pancakes." But when she stepped into my room, I was gone. Peacefully, quietly, like a candle fading when the dawn arrives. On my nightstand was the letter I'd left for her, the one that began, "My dearest Emily, don't cry for me. I had everything a man could ever want. A daughter that made me proud, a family that made me whole, and a life that taught me that losing isn't the end. Sometimes it's just the beginning. Love isn't about perfect moments. It's about choosing to forgive and hold on, even when it hurts. You did that, Emily. You turned my broken story into something beautiful. So live fully, laugh loudly, and never let regret touch your heart again. Dad." Emily wept for hours that day, holding the letter to her chest, but through her tears, she smiled. Because she knew I'd left the world exactly how I wanted to, surrounded by love, not pain. A few years later, Grace graduated college and gave a speech that made everyone cry. She ended it by saying, "My grandpa once lost everything, his money, his pride, even his place in the world. But he never lost his heart. He taught me that love and forgiveness are worth more than any wedding, any wealth, or any revenge. He didn't die sad. He lived fulfilled. And that's how I live too." The audience stood and clapped, but Emily just closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of those words like sunlight on her soul. And somewhere beyond that sunset, I knew he, Michael, the man I once was smiling. Because sometimes the story doesn't end in fire or fury. It ends quietly, in peace, love, and legacy.